It's February the 18th, 2022, and our reading today in the book of Ezra is in chapter 4. When the enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard that the exiles were building a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel and to the heads of the families and said, "Let us help you build, because, like you, we seek your God and have been sacrificing to him since the time of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, who brought us here." But Zerubbabel, Jeshua, and the rest of the heads of the families of Israel answered, "You have no part with us in building a temple to our God. We alone will build it for the Lord, the God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, commanded us." Then the peoples around them set out to discourage the people of Judah and make them afraid to go on building. They hired counselors to work against them and frustrate their plans during the entire reign of Cyrus, king of Persia, and down to the reign of Darius, king of Persia. At the beginning of the reign of Xerxes, they lodged an accusation against the people of Judah and Jerusalem. And in the days of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Bishlam, Mithridath, Tabeel, and the rest of his associates wrote a letter to Artaxerxes. The letter was written in Aramaic script and in the Aramaic language. Rehum, the commanding officer, and Shimshai, the secretary, wrote a letter against Jerusalem to Artaxerxes the king as follows: Rehum, the commanding officer, and Shimshai, the secretary, together with the rest of their associates, the judges and officials over the men from Tripolis, Persia, Erech, and Babylon, the Elamites of Susa, and the other people from whom the great and honorable Ashir Barnipal deported and settled in the city of Samaria and elsewhere in Trans-Euphrates. This is a copy of the letter they sent him to King Artaxerxes. From your servants, the men of Trans-Euphrates, the king should know that the Jews who came up to us from you have gone to Jerusalem and are rebuilding that rebellious and wicked city. They are restoring the walls and repairing the foundations. Furthermore, the king should know that if this city is built and its walls are restored, no more taxes, tribute, or duty will be paid, and the royal revenues will suffer. Now, since we're under obligation to the palace, and it is not proper for us to see the king dishonored, we are sending this message to inform the king, so that a search may be made in the archives of your predecessors. In these records, you will find that this city is a rebellious city, troublesome to kings and provinces, a place of rebellion from ancient times. That is why this city was destroyed. We inform the king that if this city is built and its walls are restored, you will be left with nothing in Trans-Euphrates. The king sent this reply to Rehum, the commanding officer, Shimshai the secretary, and the rest of their associates living in Samaria and elsewhere in Trans-Euphrates. Greetings. The letter you sent us has been read and translated in my presence. I issued an order and a search was made, and it was found that this city has a long history of revolt against kings and has been a place of rebellion and sedition. Jerusalem has had powerful kings ruling over the whole of Trans-Euphrates, and taxes, tribute, and duty were paid to them. Now issue an order to these men to stop work, so that this city will not be rebuilt until I so order. Be careful not to neglect this matter. Why let this threat grow to the detriment of the royal interests? Soon as the copy of the letter of King Artaxerxes was read to Rehum and Shimshai the secretary and their associates, they went immediately to the Jews in Jerusalem and compelled them by force to stop. Thus the work on the house of God in Jerusalem came to a standstill until the second year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. Amen. Well, it's a simple truth, a painful truth, and it's everywhere in the Bible and in church history, and to some degree maybe even in our own experience. When God is most powerfully at work, Satan will always be at work. And usually he's at work through people. Chapter 4 of Ezra, verse 1, when the enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard that the exiles were building a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel, they came to them, and they offered to help them. They seemed to be ever so friendly, these people. But in the opening verse, they are unmasked, for they are the enemies of Judah and Benjamin. Who are these people? They're not from outside the land. They are the people in the land. Verse 2 tells us exactly who they are. These are the foreigners who were brought in at the time of the Assyrian captivity. This takes us way back, centuries back, to 2 Kings chapter 17. These were settled in the area of Samaria. They intermarried with local Jewish people. They became sort of like half Jews, the Samaritans. And therefore, they are not truly the people of God. That's the significance of all those genealogical records, all those lists of names, to prove who's in and who's out. And while they seem to be very friendly, while they offer help, they are actually the enemies of these people. So they must be rejected. It maybe seems a little bit impolite, not very British. If somebody offers to help you and you say, no, sorry, we're going to do it ourselves. They had to do this because these people are not the people of God. And to compromise at this stage would have been absolutely disastrous. So the leaders, Zerubbabel, verse 3, Jeshua, and the rest of the heads of the families of Israel, they're very discerning. And to reject this kind of help when they were pretty desperate, weren't they? Remember the circumstances they're in? To reject help under these circumstances is also very courageous. And of course, such separation from the world is deeply offensive to the world. So the opening section 1 to 5, that's what I've described thus far, then leads verses 6 right to the end, which involves these letters sent to various Persian kings, full of lies, full of misrepresentation, full of deception, half-truths, fear mongering, scaremongering. Look, if you don't sort these people out, if you don't stop them doing what they're doing, these are wicked people, these are rebellious people. It'll stop you having your taxes. Now, if ever there's an argument that will get a Persian dictator off his throne and decisively moving to do something, it's that sort of threat that they make. And the king, Artaxerxes, is taken in by these people, and it leads ultimately to verse 24. Thus the work on the house of God in Jerusalem came to a standstill. If you get your charts out, if you get your timeline correctly sorted out in your mind, I think you'll find, if you do the maths, it's not obvious here, you do need to do a little bit of background, a little bit of digging. You'll find that the work on the house of God in Jerusalem came to a standstill for 16 years. That's how powerful these enemies are. That's how powerful the devil is. He has his schemes, various different types at different times. He's trying to deceive us. He's trying to deflect us. He's trying to stop us doing the work of God. So let us remember, as these people surely had some idea of this, what it says in Ephesians 6, And verse 12, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Yes, he comes through people, but it's not ultimately people we're fighting. It's the devil and all these dark spiritual forces. Therefore, verse 13, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you've done everything, to stand.